But until we say this isn't right, we need to solve it. I get it. We're not going back. It's fine. But until we say these are the problems that Brexit is causing, how do we face up to them and get them right so that we can exist? Until politicians go, there is an issue here, we need to solve this, we're not going to move anywhere.
Now, on days like today, life can feel relentlessly busy. After the stress of a long day, cooking a nice meal can feel like absolutely the last thing you have the energy for. I have to admit that's definitely me. Hands up. I just sort of forage in the fridge for anything that I can eat cold, leftovers. Michelin-starred chef Tom Kerridge's new cookbook, though, could come in very handy. Real life recipes aims to fit into our busy days, so meals are one less thing to stress about. Tom certainly knows a thing or two about being busy, running the world's first 2-star Michelin pub, the Hand and Flowers, and expanding to own restaurants in London and Manchester, also an events company, and keeping up his work as a food activist fighting child hunger in the UK with Marcus Rashford. He also has a new television series, Tom Kerridge's Sunday Lunch, and he's here live in the studio with me right now. Tom, this is a rare treat because very few people come to see me in the studio anymore now that, you know, the days of Zoom are upon us. But not only have you come to see me, but you've brought me a box of what look like the most delicious chocolate cookies ever, which I think I'm going to have to take home to my poorly son because honestly, just one of those looks like it'll double my waistline in a minute. And it's the last thing I can afford to do as a middle-aged woman.
Yeah, well, that is also the problem that they're quite Moorish as well. So one probably turns into two, and then two turns into three, and then your poor son will have none.
We can't have that. We can't have that. I'm going to keep it. I'm going to keep it all sellotaped up, but I'm very grateful for the gift.
A pleasure.
Very grateful for the gift. I'm worried about Sunday lunches, though. I'm going to talk to you about them first because the new television series, Tom Kerridge's Sunday Lunch.
Yes.
And I know that, like me, you really like a Sunday lunch. You think it's an important moment, a time to sit down, talk to your family. Are you ruining it by making a TV show about it?
Well, I'm hoping that more people will engage in the idea of it. So the TV show is out on Food Network, and it's much more about... It embraces a lot of world cuisine. It has things like pulled pork, Mexican dishes, Spanish-inspired dishes, but also covers those classics as well. And we see a Sunday lunch in this country as that roast dinner, don't we? Like, and then we all talk back about our favourite, you know, our mum's Sunday lunch was the best ever, you know, and everyone will say the same sort of thing. But actually, there's much more to that Sunday lunch, that connectivity about spending time with family and friends, sitting down, even if it's just for 10 or 15 minutes whilst you have that main course and you sit and eat something. Just connection with people and human beings, I think, is something that we recognise over the last couple of years. That was something that was the one thing that was missing. You know, when we were all trapped in our homes, we could order meal kits, we could still buy booze, you could still do, you know, you could still buy the things that you essentially go out to do in terms of hospitality, but you don't get hospitality. You don't get that warmth, that connection to people. And I think that Sunday lunch, and that's the one time of the week, it's the one vibe that you can try and get where as family and friends you can sit down and you've got that just that little bit more time to try and make something.
Absolutely. And I do also think, I mean, you were talking about, you know, your mum's recipe for Sunday lunch was the best. But there's lots of kids out there, families out there, for whom, you know, roast beef and roast potatoes or whatever isn't the standard food fare. And I'd quite love to know what other nations have for Sunday lunch. What's the best one next to the Great British Sunday Lunch that you've uncovered?
Well, actually, one of the best dishes we did was this kind of like pulled beef dish, a little bit like pulled pork, but it was like slow cooked chili style with dried Mexican chilies through it. And it was just so beautiful, so delicious. Tacos, the idea of serving that with it, but having time to make a pudding, all those sort of things work really, really well. And they touch so many different bases about flavours and what people can have and what they can try. And yeah, you're right. I mean, you know, we're a wonderfully, beautifully, culturally rich, diverse country now that is not just about Yorkshire puddings anymore. There's a lot more to it.
Though, if you look at my husband and talk to him, he'll tell you it's all about Yorkshire puddings. He orders 4 people's worth if you go to a restaurant. It's really, really embarrassing.
Does he have it with turkey on Christmas Day, though?
He has them with anything, everything.
Is he had them sweet?
Sweet?
Puddings. Have you not had Yorkshire pudding as a pudding?
No.
Oh, this will be a new one. Then you're getting a good. But imagine it. So the French do a dish called clafouti, which is essentially a Yorkshire pudding mix, kind of with some sugar through it that's then baked, and it has cherries through it or apricots or something like that. But actually, you know, and there's a great Yorkshire chef called Andrew Pern who's got the star at Harem. It's being rebuilt. Sadly, it burnt down. But a brilliant Michelin star cook who is from Yorkshire, all about Yorkshire produce, and does wonderfully sweet Yorkshire puddings with clotted cream and strawberries. And the idea of it and dusted with sugar is just amazing. Try that one.
That is a very interesting idea. Now, probably that's not what I'm going to be getting out of real life recipes, though, is it? Because you're trying to make my life simpler, no?
Exactly. It's about making it simpler. So this is
But you're a Michelin star chef. Doesn't it just go completely against the grain?
No, well, no. In terms of profession, listen, we run the Hand of Flowers. It's a 2 Michelin star pub, and it's all about the finest and the best quality produce you can find. And it's about people being professional at the top of their skill set, what they can do across the board, whether it's chefs, whether it's front of house, whether it's the knowledge of wine, whether it's the rooms that people stay in terms of interior design. This is something is trying to be the best in hospitality and get it correct. However, when I'm at home, my life is very different. And you mentioned the kind of food work that we've done, raising awareness with Marcus Rashford. And it's very apparent that, my world has been around about food for well over 30 years now. And, when you find yourself in the media and you find yourself with a voice and you find yourself with you can have a point of purpose and you can try and get messages across, particularly around the food world, to people that can listen. Because my life isn't all just about the 2 Michelin stars. There's much more to it. We do food festivals, and also the restaurants. They're different. They're different price points. They're different variations. So when you come to kind of creating or working with people like Marcus and the Full-Time Meals campaign that's ongoing and running, that reaches, it has had millions and millions of views on YouTube and Instagram and Facebook in terms of connecting with those videos, that trying to raise the awareness of the Healthy Start vouchers, trying to make sure that the mantra is that no child should go to bed hungry, and doing the work with that. It kind of like stretches a little bit more, that this book then suddenly becomes, it's much more than just a particular demographic of people. It's everybody.
It's a toolkit, though, isn't it?
Exactly that. And also our lives, when you talk about, you're on television and you're in the media, and then, when you watch TV, and when we watch television, you cookery shows on home on a Tuesday night on the television, and they're almost there as an escapism. They're aspirational. You're looking at, I don't know, what Nigella's got in her kitchen, or Jamie's beautiful outdoor barbecue at the back door, and those sort of things. And you aspire to that. You want that in your home. It's escapism from the reality of what is possibly your life. And you go, okay, because when we come in from work at 6:30, 7 o'clock at night, and people are hungry, and you open the door and your kids are going, what's for tea, mum? Exactly. So the reality of it, and how many people do themselves a starter on a Wednesday, starter and a main course and a pudding? No one. You do right. We're going to have a bowl of pasta. What are we going to have with it? Those are the realities of life, and myself included. Professionally, Michelin star chef. At home, still a dad, still got to open a cupboard and still got to find what's there to cook for a little person.
Yeah, absolutely. And they are, as you say, 2 completely different disciplines in a way. Can we talk a little bit about you and growing up and when your interest in food started? Because I don't think you were being treated to haute cuisine in childhood, and that was no fault of your hardworking mums.
No, that's it. It's very true. I grew up in Gloucester, in the centre of Gloucester, single parent family. So my mum and dad split up when I was quite young, when I was 11 years old, and my mum brought myself and my brother up, and we were, we never not felt loved or missed out on anything. And food was never the biggest part of our lives. It wasn't, it was. I'm a child of the '80s, so it was fish finger sandwiches and potato waffles and crispy pancakes, those sort of things.
Delicious, quite frankly.
Absolutely, yeah. Oxtail soup and tinned ravioli. I mean, it was, it built a nation of people.
Smash.
It's stunning. But those are the kind of food that I grew up with. And it's funny, you mentioned the Sunday lunch thing. Now, the Sunday lunch was that was probably the only real meal that my mum would cook during the week. And she was great at it. But I used to go to rugby training on a Sunday and then come back. And quite often I'd bring the waifs and strays and some of the other kids that had been playing rugby. And my mum would have done a proper roast in terms of roast potatoes, carrots, peas, broccoli, maybe a Yorkshire pudding, who knows. But the roast, the joint, because the money wasn't there, we didn't have ribs of beef and we didn't have, 4/4 of lamb or whatever. My mum used to get these sausage meat rolls from the supermarket that was obviously there to make sausage, but she'd just take them out the wrapper and roast it like a joint. So we would have this kind of roasted sausage meat.
So
But
you'd
it
have
was
the
amazing.
ritual, wouldn't you? You'd have
Exactly.
the slicing and the pulling out of the oven on
the
the
crispy
tray.
ends, like people want the end bit of a bit of beef, the same sort of thing, but it was sausage meat. And you wouldn't think anything of it. As a kid, you just think, yeah, this is lush. It's Sunday lunch. It's a piece of meat, in inverted commas, with the veg and everything else that goes with it. So that connection of Sunday lunch was amazing there, but there was no real connection. I didn't have a drive at that point to be a chef. It wasn't anything I wanted to be. I ended up going into a kitchen when I was 18 years old, needing money, washing up. And there was just the excitement, the energy that is created in kitchens or in hospitality in those spaces, the late nights, the understanding that it was slightly left field. Everybody else that went to school with had, 9 to 5 jobs. Kind of. Actually, my two best mates didn't. One of them went off to drama college, and the other one was a professional rugby player. However, the rest of my mates, all were pretty much. I don't know whether they were working on building sites or working in one of the factories or working in offices. It was just felt slightly different, a left field way of life, and it was so exciting for me. I was so lucky. Not many people at an 18-year-old find the world that they want to be in, and none of it was about money. It was all about, this is a life that I want to have. This is where I want to go, and hospitality is the most exciting. If there's people out there that are questioning where they want to go, you've got to remember that most people, pretty much everybody our age, has worked in hospitality. Many people have
My favourite job as a waitress.
Exactly. Worked as a waitress, worked behind a bar when you're at university, worked in a kitchen washing up, did something somewhere part-time. Because hospitality is kind of like at the forefront and the grounding of so many different people's life skills. As young people learn so much about leaving school, going into working somewhere in hospitality, where they then have a connection to another human being for the first time properly in a professional basis. And now, whether that's a guest or whether that's working within a workforce, and it might not be the career that they choose to go on to. They go on to be, I don't know, doctor, dentist, lawyer, whatever, radio presenter.
But it's where you learn about the benefit of hard work as well, isn't it? And I think, and learn to integrate with people. You seemingly perhaps embraced it rather too enthusiastically, but I'm not surprised actually listening to you describe it, because what you sort of set up the idea of is this kind of adrenaline fueled kind of, as you said, left field existence where you feel apart from the kind of normal cut and thrust of working life. And it also, does it feel a bit naughty? I don't know.
Those are exactly that. It is. It's exciting. It's an incredible. You got to remember that if you work in a pub, club, or a bar or a restaurant, you're in that environment where you're creating something where people go to escape necessarily, some people, the realities or the mundane. They work so that they can go out. Actually, you're already in that going out process. You're just a part of it. Your work is in them going out. So you're straight away into this good time vibe, and you're working incredibly hard. And kitchens, you have 2 deadlines every day. You have lunch and dinner you've got to be ready for, and you can't not miss that. You can't not be ready for lunch. You have to have that ready. So there's adrenaline fueled. You're right. There's an excitement. There's a buzz. There's a tension, and you have to push yourself. And, I love working hard. There's nothing wrong with working hard. You work hard. You get a buzz off it, don't you? At the end of the day, when you've done a hard day's graft, there's a sense of satisfaction, a sense of you've completed something, achievement. And you can get that in abundance from hospitality. And then on top of that, you've got opportunities to travel the world. You've got opportunities to meet people. You've got opportunities.
Have you started the hospitality tourist board? I'm just wondering, Tom. I think you are the hospitality czar, anointed by public acclaim. Tom, you have talked very convincingly, very persuasively about all the wonderful things about the hospitality business, but you've also been really open about the pressures that business had on you, or that lifestyle had on you. And at one point you were living an incredibly unhealthy lifestyle, drinking excessively, eating unhealthily, I think reaching a weight of nearly 13 stone, 15 pints a day.
Yeah.
Can that be true? That's a lot of liquid.
It's a lot of liquid, yeah, but I was up a lot during the night for going for a wee. But yeah, I was fully excessive. Everything I do in life, I do 100%. I do it excessively.
But how did you manage to do your job living like that? Or is that, I don't know, is that just part of it?
Well, it's just part of it for me. I was able to achieve and cope. I didn't drink until at the end of night, at the end of service, but then I would drink incredibly heavily until the early hours, and then I'd be back in at work at 7:30 in the morning. It was a big part of my lifestyle, but it was also, I wouldn't change a single minute of it. I loved every single minute. I loved the chaos that was caused. I loved all the I'm attracted to kind of the unknown, the chaotic. I was always attracted to those kind of mates and kids at school that they look like the most fun. I love living a life, but I did get to a point where I was approaching 40 and just thought, this is, there's only got one end in here, and it ain't necessarily a great one. So I did have to make a conscious decision of changing. So yeah, I stopped drinking nearly 9 years now. So yeah, I've not had a drink in 9 years. I've suddenly turned into the most boring, uninspiring, beige kind of human being you can find.
But that's just not true, is it? Yet that
No.
is the thing, I think, that stops a lot of people being able to give up drinking, is that fear that they're going to be, not the person, the larger than life person that they were. What do you think was driving your sense that you needed to perform like that? Do you think that having come from, what was a difficult, impoverished childhood, that somehow there was a kind of, no, I'm big, I'm huge, I'm loud, I'm...
No, I see. I've always been, from a very young age, very comfortable in my own skin. I've always been very happy walking into a room of people, having a conversation, irrespective of who they are. Like, and I've been very lucky in my life that you've met so many different inspiring and incredible figures and never been intimidated or unnerved by them. And that's come from something that I think, from an early age, from my mum telling us that, everyone's just a normal person. Just say, people achieve greatness in what they do through hard work, through determination, through a skill set, through being having a positive mindset and an outset and achieving something in life.
But rarely on 15 pints a night.
No, that I was, yeah, but I also wanted to be very good at that. So I was very good at cooking, very good at making that restaurant work. But also very, very good. I was an Olympic champion in beer drinking. And the two of them combined, one was the release of the other. So when you open a business, I opened a business as a 31-year-old person, and you go, that's quite a young age to take that responsibility on with staff, with people, and then trying to drive and connect to cooking to a particular level. We won a Michelin star within 10 months. We went on to be the first pub to win 2 Michelin stars 5 or 6 years later. And you just keep going on this drive to get better every single day. And the pressures that running a business has is immense and huge. And we've been there over 18 years now, and the ups and downs. And you can see, the last 2 years have been really bad. The next couple of years may be really bumpy. There's lots of things in the road, but the release of those pressures was something that was always needed. And for me, I find it through alcohol. And, I don't regret a single minute of it, because if I didn't have that release, I don't think we'd have been able to drive to where we were going.
Yeah.
So as a business, it's kind of goes full circle. And then there's a point where you go, okay, I'll stop it now. I won't do anything else. But that also comes with age as well. I think there's a recognition, a self-recognition for when you hit 40, there is a point, I think, where you start going, you reflect on your life, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. It takes some people a bit longer than that. But
Yeah.
you mentioned, the pressures of what you do, and I don't think there's been a more difficult period in hospitality for a very long time. First the pandemic, but now, all of a sudden facing perhaps even greater challenges. And I know you've said you relish a challenge, but we've been hearing stories of, landlords' energy costs rising from about 13,000 a year to 35,000 pounds. And it's not just energy costs, is it? It's food costs, it's everything. I don't want to depress you now that you're sitting here
don't
opposite
believe me.
me.
They're real issues.
But as someone who's trying to run businesses here in the UK, what do you sort of ascribe some of these issues to, and how do you think we're best to get out of them?
So there's a number of points here that are massive. There's first and foremost, from the pandemic, many businesses are now sat with a huge debt burden from taking on some of the loans to be able to exist, to be able to reopen. Many hospitality businesses paid their staff 80% of their wage, irrespective of whether it was up to the furlough scheme percentage or not. If they earned £40,000 a year, £60,000 a year, whatever it may be, many hospitality businesses paid their staff 80% of that wage, which comes out of their own pocket. And the furlough scheme was fantastic for staff, but actually there was still things. There was business rates relief, but many businesses didn't have landlords that were as understanding, that still demanded rent, even though you were unable to trade. So lots of hospitality businesses have taken on a huge debt burden and now trying to recuperate and coming back. There's a workforce. There's almost 500,000 people from hospitality that aren't in that workforce anymore. There's the increase, obviously, there's a huge issue regarding produce, import and export of produce, which drives costs up. There's an increase in EU standards that we are now not abiding to, that we don't have to try and drive British standards higher, which is incredible. However, to drive standards up, comes at a cost. So that all of a sudden, British farming is now becoming very expensive. To then take British produce is great. We then are doing trade deals with Australia, New Zealand, India, where produce doesn't have to have the same standards as the EU, which can be substandard to what it used to be. So then all of a sudden that puts different pressures on the business, because then people start buying cheap. So British farming gets squeezed that way. And all of these are costs that come in. And now you mentioned the utilities. You mentioned somebody there whose prices. I mean, there was pubs yesterday. There was a whole survey coming out of pubs that 7 out of 10 pubs will probably be shutting unless something is done, because those utility bills have gone so sky high, skyrocketed. One of my businesses, I'll give you an example, has had an increase of 600% in its first quote for its fuel bill. So it's an
600%.
600. It's gone from £5,000 a month to being the new quote coming through into December is £35,000 a month. And you go, well, that is just unsustainable. That's a business, and this is not just my business, this is everybody's business across board. So there is going to be a massive, a huge problem unless there are things that are done about this.
A lot of the things that you said, aside from obviously energy costs, a lot of the things that you talked about there relate back to our decision to leave the European Union. Are you surprised that the B word, Brexit, isn't mentioned more often when it comes to the sort of challenges that businesses, particularly in the hospitality business, I have to say, but I'm sure there are many others. I know it's been very difficult in the entertainment business as well, with people touring and things.
Entertainment, festivals, anything to do with people connecting with each other, it's massive. Surprised and horrified that Brexit is not talked about, because for my business, for hospitality, there isn't a single positive about it. There is not one good thing about Brexit. Now, I can understand why some people would have voted for it. I can understand how maybe some businesses benefit from it, but for hospitality, there is not a single gain from it, not one. I mean, I'll put my heart out there and say, listen, I was all about remaining. I was all about being part of the EU. I feel that connectivity to people as a collective is a much better way of moving forward and working together on a bigger picture. But for hospitality, it's awful. And the mantra of saying getting Brexit done, I mean, that's just a sentence. We haven't got anything done. What we've done is created something that's a lot worse. And until we admit it, this is the thing that I find difficult to deal with. Listen, I was a Remainer, but I understand we're not going back. There is no going back. There isn't another referendum to take us back into Europe. We are now out of Europe. Brexit has been done. It's there. That's where it's at. But just saying we've got it done doesn't solve the crisis or the problems in front of us. I was the first one. We're the first ones in our business. If you make a mistake in a kitchen, you put your hand up and you say, something's gone wrong, chef, I need to, because we have to be able to solve that before it goes to the guests and do whatever it is.
Yeah, and often it's visible.
Yeah. So we can clearly see that things are not working. We can clearly see there's a workforce issue. We can clearly see there's an import and export issue. We can clearly see that there's a problem with utilities. We can clearly see that there's so many different things that are affecting so many different businesses. But until we say, this isn't right, we need to solve it. I get it. We're not going back. It's fine. But until we say these are the problems that Brexit is causing, how do we face up to them and get them right so that we can exist? Until politicians go, there is an issue here, we need to solve this, we're not going to move anywhere.
Just finally, Tom, I want to talk to you about your work with Marcus Rashford, because again, as we face this cost of living crisis, the energy bills and everything else, the innocent victims are going to be children up and down the country, again, without enough to eat. Food banks, I think, have proliferated in the time since the pandemic. What are your concerns about the next, upcoming months and next year?
It's absolutely terrifying. You're right. Food banks, there's more food banks now in this country than there are McDonald's. The use of them is absolutely huge. And this isn't people who are just claiming some form of benefit that have to then use food banks. These are people that have maybe 1, 2, even 3 jobs that are still having to use food banks to feed their families, to make ends meet. It's absolutely terrifying. I visited one the other week in Harrow that was just an absolutely outstanding food bank. It feeds 14,000 people per week, and it's been set up. It was such an incredible, professionally run, outstanding, wonderful machine that I was so amazed and blown away by how good it was, but also moved to tears and horrified that these people have to be this good at making this professional thing. It wasn't just being like half run, like a charity kind of like bring and buy sale
like
somewhere
an
at the church. It
industrial
was
scale
it was
food
something that
bank.
was so massive, and it's absolutely terrifying. The fact that, again, the poorest will always be the ones that actually come under more pressure. Trying to make ends meet is absolutely terrifying. So the government have to grab a hold of what's going on right now, have an understanding of it. The free school meals issue, and I know we talk about trying to make sure that, yes, maybe we'll put it through into benefits or trying to change the tax system or none of that works. What we need to do is ensure that free school meals are met all the time. Kids should be eating free throughout the summer holidays, throughout the half-term break. Should be a meal should be provided, because then at least then we know it's getting done. And the problem with that is a lot of local authorities of food has gone out to profit-making organisations. So, and the moment those profit organisations, we just talked briefly about food costs going up. So where they're given a very small budget to feed a child, now all of a sudden those budgets, they haven't increased. So they're now getting squeezed. So profit-making organisations are still going to want to make a profit. This is somewhere where
it's less meals, or it's less nutritious meals.
Exactly.
I guess just finally, have you got a message for the new Prime Minister? You've got plenty to say on plenty of topics.
I've got so many different things to say. Yeah, I'd love to see. I'd love to invite them for lunch and have a right good chat with them. But first and foremost, we do have to look at the people that are facing the most financial difficulties here. Like, this isn't a case of everybody is going to be affected by this, but actually the guys that are there, that are in the areas that are the most deprived, those are the ones that we really need to focus on. They're having to make proper decisions and real decisions between food and fuel, and that is, the basic rights of being able to be warm and eat something is something that this government needs to focus on.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much, Tom Kerridge. Thank you for joining me today. Real Life Recipes is published this Thursday, the 1st of September. And if you enjoyed that, we've got a podcast where you can listen to some of our other big interviews, all fascinating people like Tom Kerridge, reflecting on their lives and careers, as well, of course, as the issues of today. It's called Mariella Meets, and it showcases some of our favourites, including actress Mina Savari, fragrance queen Jo Malone, and the Duchess of York, Sarah Ferguson. And I know Tom Kerridge will be up there shortly, probably by tomorrow, or it could be next Thursday. Anyway, there's new uploads each week. You can find it on the Times Radio app. In the next half hour, we'll be